We have got absolutely exceptional collections, including the world's largest collection of Hebrew manuscripts in a single collection, and all kinds of other things besides. Many of you know of the Cairo Geniza. We've got the world's second largest collection of those. We are a place where students come to learn and enjoy their learning, where researchers come from around the world. And if Jewish education is to be rich and deep, and if we're to make inspired connections to our tradition, one of the best places to do that, an essential support of that whole process, is the Library of JTS. So what I'd like to do is to invite you into that new library. I'm going to take you on a quick video tour first, and here it is coming up on the screen. And then we'll have an opportunity to look at some of our collection. Here we enter the new atrium of the new JTS campus from the front gate between the elevators. Some of you are familiar with the space, and you can see this beautiful large light atrium, which is sided by this beautiful garden bringing in natural light. Of course, that's open for people to sit in the nice weather, and if you want to stay inside and stay warm, you can sit on chairs or other comfortable seating like you see here. This will be a place for the entire community to gather. On one of the sides of the atrium is this auditorium. I draw your attention to it because the library is a center of programming, and some of our programs will take place right in that auditorium. As you can see, the library is there at the other side of the atrium. This whole space was designed so that the library, one of the central points of JTS, would be immediately evident from the front. And here we've got a room in which we will present to groups, small and larger, some of our rare materials. I'll tell you more about that as we go forward. Here we enter the formal library. We will invite users to go out into the atrium for their informal reading and study, to drink their coffee, have some snacks there. As we walk in, immediately to the left here is a new gallery in which we will hold exhibitions. These are special climate-controlled, secure cases. You can see this large blank wall to the side where we'll have both introductory labels, and we'll be able to hang special pieces as parts of exhibitions. And here we've got a freestanding exhibition case, all of which will be filled with regular exhibitions featuring our rare materials in their great variety. Here you've got the rare book room. As you can see, it's on the first floor. Looking with you through the window, we get a little bit of reflection here. Unfortunately, the door was locked when I did this video, and I haven't been trained in the new security system yet because of the limitations of access to the campus due to the pandemic. But as you can see, we've already returned most of the books to the shelves. This is an open shelf library with between 50 and 60,000 regular circulating volumes on site, as well as the immensity of our rare book collection. We've designed this so there would be comfortable spaces for small groups to sit and enjoy their studies. When we open with limitations during COVID, these will be assigned to individuals to work, and it will keep them safe, each apart from the other. So unbeknownst to us when we designed this, this turned out to be a very good design for our first period of opening. You can see there just to the left that the connection between the atrium and the library is both light and wide open. We walk up a beautiful staircase here, which will let light in from the second to the first floor. And as we come to the top, you can see the beautiful Jerusalem stone with which the walls here were created. We'll turn to the left, and you'll see that in addition to the cases of books in front and formal seating, there's also informal small groupings and very large, wonderful windows onto the second floor garden that will make sure that all of our students and users have the opportunity to enjoy the light and really as comfortable as you can imagine. This will be an absolutely magnificent place to study. Before I go on, I'm about to bring you into the rare book room, but I failed at the beginning to say that if you want to ask questions, you'll notice on your bottom bar to the right, there's a question and answer icon. You can click there and put questions in. And when we come to the end of my presentation, I'll go to the questions and answer as many of them as I can within the period of time that we have allotted to us. Now, I'm going to share my screen right now and take you first into the rare book room and then tell you something about what the JTS Library's rare book room holds. So here we are. Let me play it from the start. And I hope you've got a good view here. This is our new rare book room. I'll begin with a wall that you see at the far end. That wall is a stencil, actually, which is created out of cloth for walls on this floor and other floors of the library and the new JTS dormitory, which is above the library. All of these were created using the inspiration and sometimes literal elements from decorations in the manuscripts of our collection. So we've used the beauty that we preserve in our collection in order to beautify the setting itself. You can see here that we're working not with the kind of old-fashioned large, heavy wooden tables that you might expect of a rare collection, and certainly we'll see in a variety of collections in Europe and in this country, but we've designed this with great care, and security is as important as any other consideration. We know that where there have been problems with pieces of manuscripts or the like disappearing, that's almost always happened under tables. And so in addition to security cameras around this room, we've intentionally chosen glass so that it will be impossible for anybody to hide under the table something that we should be seeing. This is looking in the other direction. It's a large, beautifully lit room, climate controlled, of course. And unlike the rare book room in the old library, which was on the 5th floor and difficult to find, it communicated that this is the realm of rarefied scholars. We have, as you saw before, put this rare book room on the 1st floor in order to communicate that this is for everybody. Our hope is that when students come in and they ask their questions of our reference librarians, those reference librarians will direct them not only to the books, the circulating books on the shelves, but we'll bring them into the rare book room and we will have here, and you can see these many cases, they're all secured with locked doors in front, but we will be able to house about 3,000 volumes of our rare collection right here in the rare book room. And what that means is that we will have chosen works that integrate into the educations of our students. Our hope is that none of our students, literally not a single one, will have an opportunity to finish a JTS education without meeting these jewels which we've preserved from our history, and we hope be inspired by them. In addition, of course, visitors from the outside are welcome to come to our library anytime. And we hope that when people like you come to the library, we will be able to bring you into this rare book room as well and enrich your experience just as we enrich the experience of our students and, of course, the scholars who will come here in order to do their research. What I'm going to do now, actually, is leave the new library, and I hope to help you understand why all of this is so important, why this new library was built, and all of that comes back to the importance of our collection. So we begin here. I'm going to show you relatively quickly a number of jewels from our collection. If you've been in for rare book room tours in the past, you may have seen some of these works, but together they help make a variety of very important points. What you see in front of you is a Haggadah. We know of it as the Prado Haggadah. It comes from the Catalonian region of Spain, of Iberia, from about the year 1300. And the works that I've selected here are selected not only because they are beautiful, and they are certainly that, but also because I can show you, using these images, how our rare materials are the realm not just for scholars with specialized linguistic training, but from the pages themselves, from the borders, we can learn a lot about the experience of Jews in the multiple worlds of our past. So if you look at this, first of all, you'll notice how beautiful gold leaf. Obviously, its creation was sponsored by a wealthy patron. But if you'll notice in the decoration near the bottom, you've got a hound, a dog, and a deer. This is the beginning of a game that runs throughout the Haggadah. And the game, a riddle really, is to figure out, will the dog catch the deer? What other figures enter into the chase? And when will the chase come to an end? It seems clear that this was a game that was put into the Haggadah in order to interest the children who might have been sitting around the table, so that they would jump up as the pages were turned and say, oh, what do we learn about the next stage in this chase? This is another page from this beautiful manuscript. I draw your attention to the figure at the bottom under the word Chacham. This is the four children, or the four sons, and this is the wise son. He's got a book, as you would expect of a wise son. His hand is raised in instruction, but his clothing certainly does not look like that of a Jewish scholar, at least not as we would expect, but rather of a clerical scholar of medieval Spain, in this case of Christian Spain. What we'll see time and again from the images in these manuscripts is how Jews lived with their neighbors in a cultural fullness, that they were part of the larger culture. And you might not learn this from the words on the page, but you certainly learn it from the images. Here you've got the matzah page from the same Haggadah. And again, though this is unfinished, you can see the images of the Jewish boys, these probably are, or youths. Sometimes people mistake these for females, but the style of youths was to wear their hair long. And so here you've got Jewish young men holding a matzah for all to see. Here we've gone roughly the same period, but instead to France. There are a lot of words on this page. As you can see, this is a work known as the Machzor Vitri, which is the record of Ashkenazi practice, the earliest complete record we have actually of Ashkenazi practice from the early Ashkenazi world. 13th century, this manuscript, and at the bottom you'll notice the fleur-de-lis. Why is there a fleur-de-lis in a Hebrew manuscript describing customs and halacha and law pertaining to Ashkenazi practice? Well, you'll be able to answer that in a moment. I go to the next page from the same manuscript, and here you've got the scribe's signature. You'll notice his name is Eliezer ber Rebbe Shmu, and then we have to jump to the beginning of the next line, Shmuel, Samuel, Chazak v'nit Chazek. And at the bottom, you've got two sketches. On the left, a hunting scene, and on the right, what are clearly peacocks, although I think it's equally as reasonable to describe them as lovebirds. Why are there hunting scenes and pheasant or peacocks in a manuscript like this? Quite simply because these reflect the culture of medieval France, and it's perfectly clear that the creators of this manuscript, French Jews as they were, thought of themselves as French as much as they did think of themselves as Jewish. Interestingly, we go to the last page that I've copied for you here. And on the right, you'll notice some larger writing beginning with, if you read the Hebrew, El Givat HaLevona in the top line there. At the top of that column is a description of the fact that when you have a wedding, The wedding is supposed to end with celebration. And so the little letters at the top, the little words describe that. Then we've got a wedding song, an example of a kind of song or poem that would have been recited at the celebration itself. And what's interesting about this, you might be able to pick it up as I read it. I'll just do a couple of lines. El Givat Halavona, Notra Chassan, It Arrive. The first line being in Hebrew, the second in medieval French, and then the poem goes on, Hebrew, French, Hebrew, French. The French here is a romantic poem. The Hebrew, if we understand its double entendre properly, is actually a fairly filthy poem describing the groom's sexual conquest of the bride on the evening of their wedding. And what we learn from this is that the men who are more likely to have known some of the Hebrew, shared what men sometimes share under these circumstances, but they wanted to protect what they understood the delicate ears of the Jewish women from hearing the jokes they were telling. And so they left that part of the poem in French, which would have been the language of the Jewish women of the time. They spoke French, as everyone did, meaning all Jews did, in the course of their everyday lives. Roughly the same period, little here in this case from Germany, a beautiful machzor, which included the high holidays as well as the fall festivals, Sukkot, Simchat Torah. This is a very, very large volume, beautiful. You can see the castle surrounding the word Melech, beautiful decoration. And here we can see how the scribes sought to communicate to the congregation as a whole, and books were hard to come by. You had to be wealthy to be able to commission the writing of a manuscript, and there were no printed books during this time. And so the way the message of the prayer was communicated was through audio-visual. Here, the very large word melech, which could have been seen from throughout the synagogue, kingship being a central theme. Notice the dragons in decoration here. So what do dragons have to do with the liturgy of the high holidays? The answer is absolutely nothing. But if you lived Jew or Christian in medieval Europe, this would have been part of your active imagination. We find dragons in both Latin and Hebrew manuscripts everywhere. And that explains what we've got here, even in the midst of prayers from the most solemn days of the Jewish year. Another Haggadah, Halach Ma'anya. Here we've jumped to 1454. We're in northern Italy now, and I draw your attention to the fact that there are heads, images interspersed with decorations throughout the border of the word Ha. On this page, you'll notice that some of them are wearing costumes. It might be animal costumes, animal heads. Some are covered with hats, others not. We've got a figure or two who's wearing armor. What does all of this represent? Well, remember, Halach Ma'ani invites anybody and everybody in to join you for your Seder. And so the reasonable conclusion is that these are Jews on the street. And you'll notice that not a single one of them looks stereotypically Jewish in the way we think of it. Again, the point is the participation of Jews in the larger culture, in this case, Italian. This is a prayer book from just a little bit later than what we saw. You'll notice the circles that are scratched out here. They probably contained the images of a young woman or women. We know that this prayer book was created to be given as a wedding gift from a groom to his bride. And these images were original, scratched out by a later owner who wanted to represent himself as pious. And so he wrote Shema Yisrael in the bottom circles. But while he censored the images of the woman, he didn't change the text. And for those of you who can follow here, and you may be able to see my arrow on the screen, these are the morning blessings. We have an abbreviation for Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam Shasitani Isha V'lo Ish. This woman didn't say, well, you did the best you could. which is the way I understand the common so-called traditional prayer, but she asserted her femininity, her womanhood. Thank you, God, for making me a woman and not a man. From this, we learn, amongst other things, that Northern Italian Jews, some of them were wealthy, but in addition to that, if they were in the privileged class, the women as well as the men, the females as well as the young males, were educated. They could read the Hebrew, and they also prayed. None of which do we take for granted, but is clearly an evidence in that prayer book. This is not from our collection, but just so you could see that what I just said can easily be supported. This is from another manuscript in the British Library collection, but from the same scribe. And notice here you've got a woman who you would never identify as Jewish, except that we can see her holding a very, very fancy wine cup and reciting Havdalah. We know that because the Havdalah prayer is just to the right. Here she is making her confession for Yom Kippur. So the participation of women fully in Jewish religious life is amply in evidence. This is the most valuable of our jewels. It's called the Rothschild Machzor, and I just show you some of the many images. You can see the way the alleged Israelites standing at Mount Sinai are dressed, all of them as Renaissance Italians, which they know of as Jews, but we wouldn't recognize this way. It's notable that we've got angels coming out of heaven with Moses standing at the top of the mount, all of this in a good Hebrew. Machzor, the beauty of the decoration, the gold leaf, obviously a very, very wealthy family. Jews could not be part of the nobility, but they thought of themselves as nobility. And so you'll notice at the bottom here, they created their own coats of arms. And we know the family that used this created coat of arms in order to express their nobility. This is from 1515. I draw your attention here to the image at the bottom, clearly a family sitting around a table, enjoying the Seder. When I ask people, as I have many times, what does this remind you of? Inevitably, the answer is, oh, it looks like the Last Supper. And indeed, this manuscript with this image was created only a decade or two following the painting of the Last Supper. And so the Italian artistic tradition is amply in evidence here. That's the Maror. There above, with Italian dress on a Jewish man, notice, head uncovered. This brings us a little bit later, but we're still in Italy. Where else but Italy would you have a Megillah, a scroll of Esther, kosher for the Purim holiday, but beginning with the nude torso of a woman at the beginning. Italians had their very distinct ways, and Jews participated in that fully. Here, in order that you not think that everything we have is from Italy, although many of the great riches were created in Italy or passed through Italy, here we go to Persia. Mashhad, the Jewish community there, had an ancient, centuries-old history before this, and a very important history. By this point, there was an oppressive Muslim regime. It began in the 1840s, and Jews did have to hide their public expression of their Judaism, but they remained identifiably Jewish, unlike what had happened in Spain, where they had to hide completely. You can see that this manuscript is written in Judeo-Persian. The letters are Hebrew letters, and what you've got here is a version of the Joseph story, that Joseph and the wife of Potiphar, her name in Muslim tradition is Zuleika. And so this was shared by Jews with particularly Sufi Muslims, with the Sufi tradition, the mystical tradition of Islam, which Jews were very inspired by. And so here you can see Zuleika, or Potiphar's wife, running after trying to seduce Joseph, a beautiful example of the kind of art that Jews adapted from their neighbors in Persia. And then a last example here, another Haggadah, in this case from Baghdad, 1875. And it's a very simple work. It was written by probably the person who was going to use it, by this point, we can take for granted that most Jews were able to write. What's interesting about this is two things. First of all, that paragraph by paragraph, you've got the Hebrew of the Haggadah followed by Arabic written in Hebrew letters, but we know that they recited first the Hebrew and then the Arabic. And when we look at the decoration, it's unmistakably a Muslim decoration. So that is what I wanted to share with you. I hope you can see the absolutely fantastic quality of what we've got in our collection, and both online now and when we open up and have the opportunity to invite you back in person, you will get a chance to see these works and more. I am going to take a couple of questions. I see that I don't have a lot of time. So people who have said Happy Hanukkah to me, thank you very much. It's great to see you. Someone asked, has the technology for reading Geniza documents changed? I used a microphone reader. It's an excellent question. The answer is that yes, it's changed a lot. And here I can speak proudly of the fact that when digitization of the Geniza was beginning, there was a very generous funder who, an Orthodox Jew actually from Toronto, who wanted to digitize the entire Geniza, wherever it might be. But at that point, people hesitated, particularly with rare materials, because there was question, how do you handle the materials in order to assure that they're safe? We, the Jewish Theological Seminary Library, are the first major collection that facilitated, made possible the digitization of the Geniza, and thanks to the pioneering work we did in partnership with the organization I just mentioned, the entire Geniza, wherever it might happen to be, is available online and can be researched literally from anywhere. I'm just trying to pick up a couple of additional things. What kind of remote access is permitted for browsing collections? The answer is that we're doing our best to digitize as much as we can. We are creating videos that will be available online. We record our presentations, and so this will continue to expand. Someone asked, when will the new library be fully open and operational? Good question. That's going to happen slowly. What I can say at this point is that we will finish returning the circulating books sometime by the end of this month or the beginning of January. And at that point, we will have some final labeling work to do. So middle to late January, we will open for people to visit by reservation. It will be the inside community who will be given that privilege first, only because of the need to protect our visitors. And as things loosen up, thanks to the vaccination and hopefully levels of the virus go down, we will open up and invite everybody in. Let me see, you know, of course, right now I'm reading off the screen to get things as quickly as I can. How does one determine whether a particular manuscript's in the library, and how do you request permission? The short answer there is, if you have a question, be in touch with our reference librarians. They will be able quickly, and you can easily, we've got links online, you can ask them, do you have something related to X or Y? They'll be able to answer quickly whether there are rare materials in that connection. And if there are, we will be happy to make an appointment for you to come and see it. And we hope to make that as broadly available as possible. Let me just see. There appear to be no electrical outlets under the tables for devices to be plugged in. It's a good practical question. The answer is that they're on the floor. Yes, people will be able to plug in, but we're going to assume that everybody's going to bring their own computer and is able to do that. I see my time is coming to an end, and there are many, many questions here. So what I'll do is just simply say, if you've got a question, please feel free to email me. And I want to encourage you when the time comes, really, to be in touch, come individually, bring a synagogue group. And needless to say, all of the things we do require your support. JTS does and the library does, in order for us to be able to support not only the education that JTS provides, but also the education of scholars and their students around the world, as well as the public. I can tell you that we have synagogue groups in to see our rare materials, but we've also had groups come from the United Nations, representing nations from around the world, whom we've been able to show the jewels of Jewish life from the past, things that they couldn't even imagine. And it's very important that they know how Jews lived in and participated in their cultures. So if you're inspired by what you see, please do find the link, which is in the chat, and make a donation to the library and to JTS, and whatever you can donate, whatever support you can provide, we're very, very grateful. I wish you a wonderful last night of Hanukkah, and may we have an opportunity to dedicate the library, the new library, with a rededication ceremony next Hanukkah, a time that will be most appropriate. Thanks for joining.